Hello everyone, this is Mr. Owen, and in this tour we're going to be looking at ancient Egyptian food, drink, and agriculture. Let's see how the ancient Egyptians enjoyed their meals.
Welcome to Agriculture and Seasons.
Now, more than about 90% of ancient Egyptians spent the majority of their time farming, and the farmer's year was centered around what happened along the Nile River. As we already previously explored, the Nile had a flooding season, and following that flooding season, the farmers would then sow their fields. This was usually done in pairs, working together in order to maximize the ability to plant their crops.
While crops were cultivated in different oases around the desert, most of the arable lands were near the Nile. Two types of cereal grain were cultivated, barley and an ancient wheat known as emmer. These two key ingredients contributed in establishing bread and beer as the staple of the Egyptian diet and the basis of its economy.
Now, I don't know why that horse just rode through and destroyed that fence. Not very kind, but it is what it is. So the main staples of barley and emmer wheat would make up the majority of Egyptian diet.
The Ptolemaic era created an agricultural revolution with the introduction of advanced agricultural techniques and new grain types such as rice, durum wheat, and pearl millet. The resulting agricultural mass production greatly increased the economy of ancient Egypt. It also prompted the development of storage and transportation, allowing long-distance trade with other regions.
Now, farmers would grow many different crops. Other than emmer wheat and barley, which they used to produce beer and bread, some of the more common food items in ancient Egypt. They also grew vegetables such as onions, radishes, peas, beans, cucumbers, and lettuce. And as you previously just saw me walking by, for meat, the Egyptians raised cattle. They would also hunt geese, ducks, cranes, and other wild fowl. Cows could also provide milk, which Egyptians drank or made into cheese. While eating pork was forbidden and some kinds of fish were considered sacred, many people would eat these foods anyhow. In addition to the beer that they brewed from the wheat, they also drank wine, which was made from grapes that were grown along the Nile Delta region.
Both bread and beer rations were part of a system of barter payment. The state used those goods to pay wages for those who worked in the quarries and at the construction sites. Beer was so important to ancient Egyptians, they had a goddess of beer brewing, Tenenet. Tenenet is seen in many paintings and sculptures with beer, and women are depicted as the primary beer makers.
Oh, good puppers. Let him get out of the way, and we'll get to the next part.
In order to increase agricultural production, fertile land was divided into plots, and large agricultural villages were encouraged. The state and temples were the biggest landowners. Depending on the region, fertile land was managed by civil servants or rented to individuals. Ancient Egyptians relied on rudimentary tools for land cultivation. Soil was broken down with hoes, and wing plows were used to make furrows.
Now here you can see the Mother Nile and the many ships sailing down along it. So this could not only transport people, but also goods and resources for trade up and down the Nile, and then finally out the Nile Delta into the Mediterranean.
The three seasons known as Akhet, Peret, and Shemu corresponded to a specific phase of the agricultural process and the river's natural changes. Akhet was the time of the flood, beginning with the appearance of the star Sirius in July. Peret was the time when lands were cultivated, plowed, and sown. This fell between October and November. Shemu ran from May to September and was when harvesting and taxation began.
Now, as you can see, I'm running through these little channels dug along the sides of the Nile. So these are irrigation systems, those canals and channels that they would carve out to bring the water closer to the fields.
The pharaoh's duty was to uphold order against chaos and provide for his people, Priests and local governors also wanted to appear as protectors of the people. However, any variation in the Nile's seasons could cause water shortages. This had devastating consequences on wheat and barley crops. The pharaoh, administrators, and priests knew they needed to demonstrate their ability to prevent such a catastrophe from happening. And so they invented the story, which would be inscribed upon the famine stela.
So famine is a extreme shortage of food that can lead to, of course, many deaths because your people are starving.
The story begins with the pharaoh worried for his people. The Nile hasn't flooded in years, and his people are starving. In search of the origins of the flooding, Djoser seeks out Khnum, the protector god of the region and the source of the drought. Djoser gives the god offerings and orders his priests to restore the temple of Khnum. These offerings please the god, and the floods are restored. This story was intended to highlight the importance of the deity in everyone's daily lives, while also demonstrating the crucial role that the priests and the king played in feeding and protecting the people of Egypt.
Let's go ahead and take a more bird's eye view with my falcon here. And you can see the black land and the red land of Egypt. So you have what they call the black land, the fertile farmland that they are able to irrigate the Nile and feed their many crops to allow them to grow. And then you have the red land, the very arid, rocky, desert-like region to this side, and then of course farther away to the other side. And intermixed are multiple pyramids, the resting place of many early Egyptian pharaohs. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tour of food and drink of ancient Egypt. And as always, I will see you all in the next video. Thank you.